Welcome back, Pokemon trainers. We are here enjoying our little lunch break right before top 4.
Our like lunch breather,
yeah,
I would call it.
Not really a break.
Not pictured me furiously eating a salad so I could be back on for this match because, oh my God. First of all, top 8 was crazy.
All 4 matches were really good.
All 4 were crazy, and it's only going to get crazier from here.
Yeah, I'm very excited. Our first match that we have is Brandon Huang and Josh Mecham. So they both obviously won their top 8 sets. Brandon with the Lunala Kyogre option, and then Josh with Yveltal and Xerneas, the XY. So a little bit, 4 different restricteds in this battle, but just, overall, all of top 8 was really fun.
Yeah, and no more Xerneas mirror, which I think is going to be a nice mental break for all of us before we go into our next top 4 match, which is going to be Nick versus Aaron, which I don't even know where to begin about that match.
That might be the match of the weekend, honestly.
I'm excited. I'm very excited.
All right. So as our players are finding each other, they're getting set up in the game. I think one thing we can mention with Brandon's team is I'm a big Terrakion guy. I'm a big
we haven't seen it yet. Though.
I'm a big fan of the whole the Justice trilogy, whatever the 3.
So
the Swords of Justice. I forget what they're called.
No. So I was told that they're referred to as the 3 Musketeers.
Okay.
Because if you think about it, they're all fighting type Pokemon, and then there's like some part of the legend where like they get an apprentice or whatever, and that's who Keldeo is.
And
not
then it's
that
in the movie
Keldeo's ever been
right?
relevant, in the format, but
yes.
And sorry, what were you saying?
No, I was saying that in the movie they do something with that too, right? The 3
I've only
Musketeers.
seen not that movie version of it. I was going to say a certain cartoon franchise, but I don't want to cross the beams that much for this stream.
That's fine. Totally understandable. Yes, we have not seen Terrakion at all this weekend, and I wonder, Terrakion obviously hits Yveltal super effectively, but is weak to Xerneas. Is this the time to break out one of the big dogs from Generation 5?
Wait, are we calling Terrakion a dog now? I thought we just established that it's a 3 Musketeer. I'm sorry, but the overlap between things I consider 3 Musketeers and things I consider dogs, it's not a Venn diagram.
I don't know.
It's
He's
just
got 4 legs.
Circles.
Some would argue all Pokemon are dogs.
Oh, let's not get into that here. Because next thing you're going to be telling me is that Groudon is a duck. And I think we've been down that road so many times in the past. Like, seriously.
It triggers me, that argument. But yeah, so what do you think about Terrakion's odds when he's good against Yveltal but weak to Xerneas in this matchup?
I honestly don't know, and here's why. Looking at how 2 trainers' teams are set up, looking at the Pokemon that they're, could potentially bring into these games, there's so many different options. I don't think this game is going to be as simple as, my opponent has these 6 Pokemon, I bring these 6 Pokemon, that is my game plan.
Right.
I think we're going to see a lot of sort of adaptation, we're going to see a lot of adjustments after game 1 because, if Josh brings that Yveltal, for example, game 1, and Brandon doesn't bring the Terrakion, and that Yveltal is just able to completely just crash through his team. We were talking during the break about the matchup that Yveltal has against Lunala. Spoiler alert, it's not great. That might be an adaptation that he's forced to take, at which point Josh might then respond to the fact that the Terrakion's on the team and then decide to bring in something like the Landorus Therian who can handle it better. It's not a clear-cut matchup. It's going to come down to how these trainers play and what Pokemon they decide to bring to the game, and I think that's great. I mean, that's the kind of games us as spectators and commentators want to watch as top 4 games, because as interesting as it is when things are maybe a little bit more one-sided and you get to see sort of a flowchart playthrough of the game, I personally love to dive into how players think and how they, sort of approach the game. And this kind of matchup really highlights that, and I think that's great.
Yeah, I love the point you bring up about the 6 Pokemon and how you can't in VGC. I love you bring 6, choose 4. That's the format because you can't always have everything at all times. You need to choose. You need to pick and choose when to bring and what to bring in each matchup. So you can't always have what you want, some would say. We have a very fast lock-in from Josh. Brandon is still looking through, but if we can get it in quickly, Yveltal, Amoonguss, Incineroar, Xerneas, Kartana, and Landorus Therian is for Josh. And then for Brandon has Tapu Koko, Lunala, Kyogre, Kartana, Incineroar, and Terrakion. And a supportive Tapu Koko, so really not even offensive pressure from it.
Yeah, we saw that revealed on stream, I believe, yesterday. I don't think it came into play in his top 8 match against Megan. It's really curious to me that Josh was able to lock into his Pokemon so quickly. I mean, both these trainers were featured on stream, and furthermore, they both had a chance to sort of view the top 8 matches as they played out. And as a result, I think he probably has already formulated a game plan for Game 1. Sort of looking at how his team is set up, I wouldn't be surprised if we see something like a Xerneas and then an Incineroar or an Amoonguss lead. You know, just try and get the Xerneas set up, see how much damage it can do, and then save that Yveltal for later on in the match. But instead, it looks like he's doing the complete opposite of that, which is going to give this Tapu Koko, I think, a chance to really deal some big damage to Josh as this game begins.
So let's get into it. Game 1 of top 4 between Josh Mecham and Brandon Huang. Both of these players. Brandon has one top 8 appearance already from early this year, so this would be either of theirs first appearance in the finals of a regional.
Which is so much pressure to have to play through, honestly. Like, I can't imagine the nerves on these players' mind. I would personally be shaking, honestly. But let's break down this first turn. You know, the presence of the Amoonguss on the field, I think, means that Josh has the option of focusing all the attention on it, and I think that's going to be really important for Yveltal to start using knockoff or maybe some other kind of damage-dealing move. Like a Snarl would be amazing right now for him.
A Nature's Madness from the Tapu Koko goes into the Amoonguss thanks to the Rage Spreader, but the knockoff through Shadow Shield. One hits Lunala. That is the power of Dark Aura Yveltal. I was not expecting that.
Okay, so that did so much damage.
Shadow Shield lowers the super effectiveness.
Yes, so it has to be holding some item that can boost the damage of those attacks, and even then, I feel like that knockoff getting that KO is just so risky. So, you know, we did a little bit of math earlier on before this game came on, and assuming that the Yveltal does have an attack boosting items, let's say Black Glasses, for example.
Right, because we didn't see Life Orb.
We did not see Life Orb. Knock off onto a Lunala holding a Z Crystal with Shadow Shield still activated is a literal 50% chance. That is the definition of a coin flip, and it just happened.
All right, Tapu Koko will go for the Electro Web onto both of Josh's Pokemon, so that will lower both of their speeds by 1 stage. And the Smart Strike from Kartana into Amoonguss. It's a very strong Pokemon. Not strong enough to take down the bulky Amoonguss, though, which will live on 5 HP. And a Tailwind from Yveltal saying that Electro Web doesn't even matter because now my Pokemon speed is doubled for the next 3 turns.
For the next 3 turns, but that Tapu Koko is, I think it's at full health enough so that it could get another one of those Electro Webs down and potentially negate the presence of the Tailwind for these 2 Pokemon on the field. Or maybe I should say 1 because Amoonguss is not
he
very
can't
fast.
live that,
But the more important threat here is that if this Amoonguss gets knocked out, then one of Josh's Pokemon can come in and take advantage of the Tailwind. And I think that's what Josh is looking for.
Josh just knocked off the Focus Sash from Brandon's Kartana here. Not enough for a knockout, though. And another Electro Web from Brandon will take down the Amoonguss and bring Yveltal pretty low, probably in range of the Smart Strike, actually, as it does go down. And Kartana now has the +1 in its attack stat thanks to its Beast Boost ability, and Brandon is up 4 Pokemon to 2.
He's up 4 Pokemon to 2, actually 3 Pokemon to 2. And that Kartana is almost going to be knocked out.
Because of the Lunala. It was on the field so short, I forgot it was there.
I mean, I'm not surprised. I wasn't expecting us to see that interaction between the Yveltal and the Lunala so early on in Game 1, but Josh just very confidently went for it, and now Brandon's going to have to be really careful about that Lunala going into Game 2 because now that, you know, the Amoonguss and the Yveltal are out of the way, Tailwind is still up on the field, this Xerneas is free to go for a Geomancy, and Josh's own Kartana is guaranteed to outspeed the opposing Kartana, get that knockout, and then get a Beast Boost of its own. Really, all Josh has to do is play very safe for the next couple of turns, and he's easily going to take Game 1.
Brandon will protect, so he doesn't want to take the Sacred Sword from Kartana on Josh's side, and Xerneas is going to try to pull this game back for Josh, going for the Geomancy, increasing its special attack, special defense, and speed by 2 stages each. But of course, that means this turn he is going for an attack. So if Tapu Koko goes for another Electro Web, as Brandon does, it connects onto both of Josh's Pokemon. That's going to lower both of their speed, and there is 1 more turn of Tailwind for Brandon to take advantage of next turn.
There is. I wonder if Brandon does have that Kyogre as his last Pokemon and it comes in, it's going to be able to deal some massive damage. But as long as Xerneas doesn't take really any more damage in its health, as long as it's able to, knock out that opposing Kartana before it can deal big damage, I think it's very likely that the Xerneas will be able to survive a Water Spout from the Choice Scarf Kyogre in the rain, thanks to those boosts, and then immediately fire back a Moonblast and knock it out. So Electro Web is nice. It's a nice to have, but I think that Brandon's going to have to find a way to get more health down onto that Xerneas in order for it to have a chance to sort of win this game for him.
Kartana tried to protect, but it failed. He went for the double protect, which is only a 30% chance of happening, and it did not go in Brandon's favor. And the Leaf Blade with actually does knock out the Tapu Koko here.
Yep.
So now Josh has the speed boost. So now he's at +1, and then Xerneas has all those boosts as well. Tailwind does disappear, as does Electric Terrain, and now Brandon's down to just his Kyogre.
Well, presumably. We haven't seen it yet, but yeah. I was figuring, you lead the Lunala and the Tapu Koko, so then even if your opponent does have the option for something like a Tailwind from that Yveltal, you can use Electro Web enough times to negate that. But unfortunately for Brandon, I think Josh was able to sort of get those Pokemon out of the way. Like, he allowed him to do that, really. He was the one that knocked out the Amoonguss and the Yveltal, and as a result, it just kind of fell into place for Josh. I would not be surprised if going into Game 2, Brandon does not lead that Lunala. I don't think he can. That Yveltal is just so scary. He cannot take the risk. He needs something to knock out that Yveltal. And looking at his team, what Pokemon can knock out Yveltal?
My good buddy, rock fighting type Terrakion.
Exactly. And even then, that's still going to be a tall ask because the Xerneas is a fairy type, which will be able to deal super effective damage. Terrakion not known to be bulky at all, really. Kartana is going to be a threat to that as well. Brandon really has to maneuver this Terrakion in such a way, or even maneuver the Lunala in such a way, that the Yveltal is either taking so much damage it can get knocked out by one hit, or otherwise doesn't have the opportunity to immediately remove one of his strongest Pokemon from the field, his Z-move user even, from the field, and then set up a Tailwind or two for its buddies in the back.
Yeah, I think obviously Brandon needs to make an adjustment. We briefly touched upon Tapu Koko not being offensive during team preview at the beginning, and you look at the cost of it. Sure, you had utility with Electro Web, but you weren't really able to provide much offensive pressure against Kartana and Xerneas, and that's what ended up costing him in the end. And I would like to say I am proud to announce that on your screen in a second will be Terrakion, everybody. Let's go.
You really played that up. I'm impressed. Good job.
It was one of my favorite Pokemon in VGC 2015, so it has a special place in my heart.
For for good reason. This Terrakion's in a really nice spot right now because assuming it has something like Rock Slide, the Rage Powder from that Amoonguss is not going to be a threat at all to it. It can just start firing off those Rock Slides, firing off, those Electro Webs from the Tapu Koko, and essentially wear down Yveltal, and Josh switching it out here is a great sort of, respect for that, and the Kartana is his best answer. Unfortunately, this Terrakion is also a fighting type Pokemon. If he calls the switch and goes for a close combat.
So he went to Skydrop the Amoonguss to get her Rage Powder. So now that Continental Crush comes out, it would have hit the Yveltal. But instead, Josh switched out because he was so afraid of it that Kartana is going to eat this much better than Yveltal would have. I understand what Brandon went for. It's just a great call from Josh.
It is a great call from Josh, but that Kartana, if it's holding something like a Focus Sash, it doesn't matter how much damage this does. In reality, it does like nothing. A great defensive switch, which is a really bizarre thing to say, considering that he swapped in a Kartana of all Pokemon for that Yveltal slot. At least for Brandon, he was able to remove that Amoonguss from the field, and there will be a turn here where it cannot use the Rage Powder to retarget things. So this Terrakion does have an opportunity to use something more offensive like that close combat to remove that Kartana from the field. But, burning that Z move is huge. He probably was hoping that that would be the move to just one-hit that Yveltal, like the Yveltal one-hit his Lunala back in Game 1.
Right, and if you look at it, Kartana is just barely faster than Terrakion.
Just,
it literally could
right?
literally not get any closer to being the same speed. That's how close they are. So if I would have expected a Leaf Blade or a Smart Strike into that slot, and that's exactly what Brandon was thinking about as well, because he switches his Kartana in. It was going to resist either Smart Strike or Leaf Blade, so that was a very smart turn. And then the Sky Drop will bring Amoonguss back down. He can't Spore, and he can't Rage Powder, obviously, so he has to go for Clear Smog into the Tapu Koko. Is super effective, but really does not do any damage.
No, it doesn't, and that's okay. I mean, every little bit of chip onto something like an Assault Vest holding Pokemon like this Tapu Koko will potentially pay off if you're able to keep the rest of your team moving. And I think that Josh still has plenty of options in that regard. You know, the Amoonguss can go for a Rage Powder this turn. It can try and buy its buddy Xerneas a little bit of time. We could even see Josh, you know, switch around yet again to try and give himself a better position. But overall, I really want to call out the fact that Brandon did switch out the Terrakion for the Kartana there. I think that was just a really well-called play, and just indicates also that he only brought one of his restricted Pokemon to this game, and it makes me wonder if he decided to leave the Lunala on the sidelines entirely, just respecting the fact that that's how crazy powerful Yveltal is in that matchup.
I think that definitely makes sense, because we saw how strong Yveltal was against Lunala, that Brandon was like, okay, maybe we don't really need it in game 2. Yveltal will switch out, so for every Generation 6 lover's dream is having Xerneas and Yveltal on the field at the same time. There it is for you all. Electro Web will lower the speed of both of Josh's Pokemon here, both of his restricted Pokemon. And a Smart Strike from Kartana into the Xerneas is enough to knock it out there. I think Josh was going for the cheeky Geomancy at the afterwards, you know, just seeing if he could live the Smart Strike, be very low and still be fast and knock it out. But Kartana now has the Beast Boost.
Kartana has the Beast Boost. Kartana is going to threaten the opposing Kartana. Really, if Brandon uses Detect or Protect, whichever one he has, uses the Electro Web to ensure that his Kartana will outspeed the opposing Kartana, and is able to sort of work around the tailwind that the Yveltal threatens right now, we very well could be going into a Game 3, especially if the last Pokemon is that Kyogre on Brandon's side of the field. Really, knocking out the Kartana here, I think, is his win condition, because we already know that Yveltal is holding, like, you know, the black glasses. So it's not going to be that bulky, and provided Kyogre has some attack that can deal damage that's not based off its health, like Water Spout, that's just an easy cleanup for Brandon.
Right, so, like a single target Scald or something like that. Or
even like an Origin Pulse. Even though it's not that accurate, it's not doing damage based off your own health. So something like Sucker Punch, provided you can hold on through the attack, which I would imagine a full health Kyogre could take one of those. You can fire back and you can get that KO. Another
Electro Web from Tapu Koko will hit both of Josh's Pokemon. Kartana now down into the red. Any attack will knock it out. There is the speed tie, and Josh wins it. Sacred Sword brings Brandon down into the red, but the Smart Strike from Kartana into Yveltal will be enough to take it down. Now Brandon's Kartana is +2 in attack, and he still has the Terrakion in the back.
So really respecting the fact that Yveltal was so detrimental, not even giving it a chance to do anything this game. Just big damage, big damage, big damage, and now it's down to Josh's last 2 Pokemon. I don't even think Rage Powder would really help Josh out at this point, because that Kartana on his side of the field is just 1 Electro Web away really from getting knocked out. And the fact that Kartana is +2 as well, I think any attack it fires off into that Amoonguss, if it's not a guaranteed knockout, unless that Amoonguss has something other than the Clear Smog, it's not going to be able to do any damage anyways. So just really a great job from Brandon. And, you know, this forfeit from Josh makes sense. You know, I think that he did essentially lose that game at this point, but we didn't see Brandon's last Pokemon. And I think that's going to be sort of detrimental.
Right, we don't know what restricted he brought.
We don't know what restricted he brought. And I feel like him not even taking the chance to try and figure out what that last Pokemon is either one, an indication that Clear Smog is his only attacking move on that Amoonguss. I don't think we've seen anything else yet, at least in this game. Or it's just a fact that he's probably assuming that it was the Kyogre, and that he doesn't need that information going into this game. He already has a plan what he can adjust, maybe how he can play that Yveltal a little bit more effectively, knowing that it's going to be the main target of Brandon's aggression. After, especially, again, after that detrimental game 1.
So now that Josh is in the backside, he has to adjust. A thing he can do is Lander Asterion hits the Terrakion super effectively, hits Tapu Koko also. It's really not threatened as much by Kartana. It hits Incineroar super effectively. I think that might be an adjustment for him if he doesn't think the Amoonguss or something else is going to help him in this matchup.
It would be a good adjustment.
It would also intimidate his physical attackers.
And it would add Intimidate for his physical attackers, but that Kyogre is a good answer to the Lander Asterion. It's not like this perfect Pokemon that you can just substitute in and then everything works out fine. Going back to what we were saying before this game, it's really just how these Pokemon are going to interact together, how these puzzle pieces are going to fit. And it looks like we already have the first adjustment on the field from Josh. And a change from Brandon as well.
There we go. Both players adjusting. They understand the gravity of the situation. This is Game 3 of Top 4. The winner will move on to the finals here in Dallas. Both of these players, this would be their first final appearance. So this is a huge moment. And I'm sure, you know, the stress going through every turn for these two.
I know, there's so much on the line right now, but at least it looks like Josh has given himself a few more options going into this turn 1. Because we know that Tapu Koko is offensive, the fake out from that Incineroar can comfortably go into that Kyogre, and Xerneas can get the Geomancy boost. It might not have, you know, the +2 speed at the end of this turn. It might take a little bit from that Electro Web from the Tapu Koko, but at least it'll have the special defensive and special attacking boosts, which I think is going to be more important because turn 2, Kyogre has Choice Scarf, or it could be just off the field, and it could have taken a lot of big damage from something like a Lunala as well. So special defense boost is going to be key.
Lunala's back is immune to normal type attack, so that fake out doesn't matter. It's immune, doesn't do any damage, and the Electro Web from Tapu Koko will lower Xerneas' speed here. But with Lunala being back as Xerneas goes for the Geomancy, that means Brandon had to leave something else behind. So last game we saw the Kartana and the Terrakion were the other two. Yep. So one of them is not here.
And it makes you wonder which one of these Pokemon it's going to be. I'm personally, I'm going to say that he's playing it a little bit safe, and I think Kartana is the safest option for him, just to give him more stuff to stop this Xerneas with. But, you know, if he's playing risky, if it is that Terrakion, and if he's able to just kind of keep it hidden until the Yveltal is potentially revealed on Josh's side of the field. Remember, we don't know if that's what he brought yet. Then that could be a great late game advantage for him. But there's just so much he has to get through to get there. And that first thing he has to get through is this Geomancy Xerneas.
Yep, the Dazzling Gleam will break Lunala's Shadow Shield. So Incineroar, if it went for the knockoff, won't hit it. But Lunala has Roar! So Xerneas has wasted its item essentially, is roared out. Kartana comes in, which is still all right for Josh because of how much offensive pressure it has. But I'm pretty sure that the Incineroar went for a dark type attack into Lunala.
I would be pretty sure about that as well. Great synergy between that Tapu Koko and that Lunala, using Skydrop to remove the threat from the field and giving Lunala the opportunity to use Roar, which normally would move last because of its lowered priority. Just a great play from Brandon, something that he's definitely prepared for. And while Xerneas losing that Geomancy boost and its item is not great, I think Josh can recover from it, but he needs to start thinking through that plan now. And I think that plan begins with knocking out the Tapu Koko and then, again, going for something like a knockoff into that Lunala.
I also want to point out, if it weren't for that Assault Vest on Koko, it would not have lived the Dazzling Gleam.
You're right.
So that is another benefit and a reason that Brandon brought it in this match. But Kartana essentially gets a free Beast Boost by knocking out the Koko with the Leaf Blade. And now Lunala with a Tailwind here will boost Brandon's speed for the next 3 turns. A U-turn from Incineroar is probably going to go out into, well, obviously either the Xerneas or his 4th Pokemon.
Or if that fourth Pokemon is that Yveltal, now would be a great time to send it out on the field because that Tailwind's already up. You know, Lunala could do something like a Roar again, I guess, but otherwise it's going to be, you know, threatened by that Sucker Punch. So Brandon, I think he's going to be forced to avoid that because Lunala, you know, it's, as we know, it's the only Pokemon that he brought to this game that has that Z move. And I think being able to deal that big damage is going to be really big going, later on in the game. That being said, if that last Pokemon on his side of the field is that Terrakion, this is the setup you want to bring it in on because you already have Tailwind up. You know that you're going to be moving first. You know that you're going to have the opportunity to outspeed that Kartana, which normally you don't do. So the fact that the Kyogre was the thing that came back in here, I think, means that he does not have Terrakion.
I think so, yeah.
And that is something that Josh needs to remember moving forwards because I think that gives him a lot more freedom as to how he's going to move through these turns. That he's still not in a great place. That Kyogre is at full health. It has Choice Scarf. It has Tailwind. It can go for Water Spout here. And most likely 2 attacks from Lunala and Kyogre should be enough to knock out either one of these Pokemon. So just a lot of things up in the air. If Brandon thinks he's going to get a Sucker Punch, then he's going to switch out the Lunala and just rely on Water Spout to get some damage down. But this could give Josh's Kartana another opportunity to get a Beast Boost with something like a Leaf Blade into that Kyogre.
Sucker Punch from Yveltal into the Kartana. It fails, though, because it was switched out. And now this is a free Water Spout, knocking out Yveltal from full, bringing Kartana down to its Focus Sash. I thought Yveltal was going to Sucker Punch the Kyogre so that Water Spout wouldn't do a lot of damage.
I think Josh was afraid of the Lunala. He was afraid of the Z move, which unfortunately for him just wasn't really a threat at that point in time. I agree. I think that the Sucker Punch, would have been better served into the Kyogre, but at least the Kyogre's gone off the field, and Brandon's down to his last 2 Pokemon here. So if Josh is able to sort of stall out the remainder of this Tailwind, and if this Lunala comes in and it's already at half its damage. There's a potential here that Brandon is going to have to go for the Z move this turn because otherwise it might just get knocked out.
Right, you might as well use, even if it's a resisted attack into Incineroar, you might as well take as much damage as you can, because if you don't use it, if you don't use it, you lose it. So he's got to use the Z move while he has the chance because it's threatened by both a +2 Kartana and Incineroar. This Lunala is not sticking around long.
No, it is not. Fake out into the opposing Kartana from Josh's side of the field. Lunala is going to move first because of the Tailwind still activated. So it's possible that, I don't know, I feel like there's going to have to be a double protect somewhere in here in order to give Josh sort of an opening. He needs to stall out the remainder of that Tailwind, and if he's unable to do so successfully, and Brandon's able to get his own Kartana a couple of boosts, that'll be it.
Brandon wins the speed tie and knocks out Kartana, so even with the 1 HP critical hit, we take those. Critical hits obviously not mattering in this situation. Now Brandon has the Beast Boost, and we're in rain, so a Flare Blitz is not going to do as much to the Kartana. Here is the Z move. It is resisted, but any amount of damage he can get is great because the next turn he can Sacred Sword the Incineroar at +1 and knock it out.
Yeah, definitely. I believe Tailwind was still up, though, so
yep,
I don't think that was a speed tie. I think the more interesting thing to call out is the fact that the Incineroar didn't use Fake Out onto the opposing Kartana.
Right.
Which is, I don't know. I'm not really sure what Josh was expecting to get from this turn. Maybe he's hoping that, he can knock out the opposing Kartana, and then everything, in the fact that he has left can sort of knock out the Lunala, since it is already damaged fairly heavily. But still, it's going to be a really interesting couple of remainder of turns because, while that Kartana is the last Pokemon on Brandon's side of the field,
and the rain stops.
And the rain stop. The Kartana is at +1, and it does have Sacred Sword, and most Incineroar do not carry things like Protect. So it's going to come down to, of all things, a Kartana versus Xerneas matchup.
Right.
Kartana forced to knock out the Incineroar this turn. Xerneas is going to have the opportunity to Moonblast it once, break the Focus Sash on it, and then if that Moonblast... actually, wait. No, because... Xerneas won't be faster than Kartana at all at this point. So
right.
I think
so Sacred Sword knocks out Kartana here, and Xerneas cannot knock out the Kartana because of its Focus Sash. Now it's +2 with its Beast Boost. Its Moonblast will probably bring it down to 1 HP, but Kartana is faster. A +2 Smart Strike into the Xerneas, and I think Brandon has found a way into the finals.
What a crazy close game. Just really well played by both these trainers. Coming down to the wire, like literally Kartana holding on with 1 HP.
With 1 HP!
But fortunately for Brandon, unless he's running a weird variant of Kartana that's not faster than the Xerneas, which is not the
+2 Smart
case.
Strike into the Xerneas. The players shake hands, and Brandon Huang is moving on to the finals here at the Dallas Regional Championship.
Yeah, just very well played, very well played. And I can't say that enough because it was just so close, you know. A little bit of damage onto that Kartana on Brandon's side of the field. As long as that focus sash was broken. I mean, did you see how much that Moonblast did to that Kartana?
It's so frail, yeah.
I know, that would have been enough to win it, but just able to kind of keep his cool and keep things moving the way that he needed to move. And, excuse me, more importantly, figuring out how to play that matchup with his Lunala against the Yveltal. I think that was sort of the key thing to happen in Game 3 compared to Game 1 because, you know, Game 2, we didn't have the Lunala Yveltal sort of come into play.
Right. How brave to bring Lunala against 2 dark types, right? With Incineroar and Yveltal.
It's a really tough call, but, you know, looking at the way that his Lunala was built, because I think if he were running a purely offensive set, I wouldn't bring a Lunala against 2 Dark-type Pokemon, but, you know, he had the Tailwind to support the other Pokemon on his team, and he had the Roar to mitigate the threat of the Xerneas. And I think those are the reasons why, and the Z-move, I guess. Those 3 things are the reasons why he had to bring that, I think, in Game 3, because he needed that utility. And now that he knew what kind of Yveltal that Josh was running, maybe that wasn't something he had really established before that game and saw that, you know, literal 50-50 in Game 1. He knew what he had to do to play around it. And I think that's why best of 3 like sort of makes these exciting games like that, because that's all knowledge that we saw sort of discovered as those games evolved. And at the end of the day, you know, Josh played that incredibly well. I think that he did an amazing job of sort of keeping his options open. But, you know, when you have a Focus Sash Kartana, you need 2 hits to knock it out. It doesn't matter what you're hitting it with, and Josh just didn't have those turns.
Yeah, what a great game by both players, especially Brandon. It seemed like early on in Game 3, after the Geomancy was set up, like it just seemed like the Xerneas was in such a good spot for Josh that he had the lead, and Brandon brought it back. The Z move use, remember, on Lunala?
Oh yeah,
I think that did matter, even though it was resisted because Sacred Sword into. I think that chip damage actually was pivotal for it. So yeah, congratulations to Brandon. I can't wait to watch his match of finals. But the question is, who is he going to play in the finals?
Is it going to be Nick Navarre? Is it going to be Aaron Traylor? I don't know, but I can see them setting up on stage. So we're going to take a quick break. Get ready to bring that game to you, and we'll be back real soon.